Hello, everyone, and welcome to Menus of Change, Principles and Actions, case studies from the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative. I'm very excited to introduce Sophie Egan, the founder of Full Table Solutions, to moderate this informative session. Sophie, thank you so much for joining us today. The stage is all yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you. I am the co-director of the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, proud co-director that is, and I'm also founder of Full Table Solutions, as Sarah mentioned, which is a consulting practice that's a catalyst for food systems transformation. I'm also an author, most recently of the book, How to Be a Conscious Eater, and you can join me in the author greeting session later today. Today, we're really excited for this session, which is all about sharing stories from leaders from the University Research Collaborative who are accelerating transformative programs that are inspired by one or many of the Menus of Change principles, including what climate conscious dining means to each of them. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Colleen Wright-Riva and Allison Tjaden of University of Maryland, as well as Marcus Carson from Duke University. Before I turn it over to them, I want to share a little bit of background about the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, who we are, what we're about, and how you can take advantage of the many resources that we've cultivated and curated since we were founded in 2014. So the MCRC is a partnership of the Culinary Institute of America and Stanford University. Together, we are 60 institutions, 250 members across the United States and beyond that use campus dining halls as living laboratories for behavior change. More specifically, we are an accelerator of the implementation of Menus of Change principles. We really work to unearth what are the most effective ways to shift people towards healthier, more sustainable, and absolutely more delicious food choices. And we do that using evidence-based research, education, and innovation. Our vision is cultivating the long-term well-being of all people and the planet, one student, one meal at a time. We really do believe that students are the best way forward. Not only is it because of the incredible collective purchasing power we have across our campuses, 800,000 meals served daily in our case, but also because of the tremendous identity formation that occurs during one's college years. And if we can successfully shape preferences and identities in favor of healthy, sustainable food choices during those college years, that can actually affect 15 billion meals throughout the course of their collective lifetimes. And lastly, students are the next generation. They're tomorrow's leaders, entrepreneurs, consumers, and parents. So we foster collaboration through three main ways. One is that we bring together university-based leaders from many different areas of campus that traditionally work in silos and never speak to one another. This includes senior university administrators, academics, dining directors, nutrition and sustainability managers, executive chefs, and student fellows. We also foster collaboration across many campuses. We have pioneered a groundbreaking behavioral research model that really does actually multi-site studies. And then lastly, we foster collaboration among different disciplines within academia, who again are often traditionally quite siloed, whereas understanding behavior change related to food is so complex that we absolutely need transdisciplinary approaches to this research. We're a vast, extensive, and inclusive, very diverse membership. We include small and large universities, public and private, and we work very closely with two ex officio members, Google and US Olympic Training Center, who have relevant insights to lend to what we're doing, as well as much to gain from the insights that are generated in campus dining settings. Lastly, we work with research collaborators, EAT Foundation, Food for Climate League, leanpath.org, ReFed, and World Resources Institute. We could not do the work that we do without our incredible sponsors who are absolutely mission aligned with Menus of Change principles. We're grateful to our founding sponsors as well as to our ongoing sponsors. And in closing, I wanted to share two final pieces with you, which is what our research agenda looks like, what we feel the answers are that we're seeking in terms of understanding those most effective ways to shift diners towards healthier, more sustainable food choices, and then also some resources. On the research front, really when we take a step back and say, what is it that we need to understand about these behavioral shifts that need to occur, it boils down to these three buckets, which are plant-forward diets, drivers of food choices more broadly, and food waste reduction. So I mentioned that we use a real-world living laboratory format, dining halls when we can, of course, But we also are culinary centric in our research, which again is unheard of. This includes looking at things like menu language, but also deliciousness. How does a recipe, the actual taste of the food, affect whether or not someone chooses it and enjoys it? So that's really our research agenda, and we're excited to share resources that have come out of that pipeline, as well as what has been produced by our education working group. We have 2 working groups, and our research working group really drives forward that research agenda. In addition to our education working group, we have many professional committees, and our executive chefs committee has been especially prolific. So there are protein, culinary best practices. You can find a whole suite of resources at moccollaborative.org. In addition, there are items such as the gap analysis tool, which enables any food service professional to self-evaluate. How are you progressing on menus of change principles? What kind of progress are you making? And then most recently, our Edgy Veggies Toolkit. This is a really exciting publication because it's essentially the translation, the operational translation of a peer-reviewed publication that came out last fall in Psychological Science. It was actually the largest study ever measuring food choices in multiple universities. What it found essentially is that you have to lead with flavor in terms of menu descriptions, and it makes a huge difference when it comes to selection and consumption of vegetables. So we encourage you to check out that toolkit and many other materials. It can actually help you learn how to entice customers to choose veggies and many other things. Because at the end of the day, we are a collaborative, we're a working group, but everything that we do is open source, and it's aimed to lift the entire, not only higher education and college and university sector, the entire food service industry at large. So with that, I'm excited now to turn it back over, to welcome, that is, Colleen Wright-Riva, who is the Director of Dining Services at University of Maryland, and Allison Tjaden, Assistant Director of New Initiatives at University of Maryland. They're going to tell you about a really exciting pledge that they've taken and how it relates to menus of change principles.
Thank you, Sophie. Hi, everybody. As Sophie said, I'm Colleen. I've been the Director of Dining Services at Maryland for 13 years. Previous to that, I was at Cornell University for 7 years. And what I'm going to do is share a little bit of background about our department before Allison talks a little bit about our Cool Food Pledge. Maryland is one of the largest self-operated collegiate dining programs in the country. Our annual revenue is typically $70 to $75 million a year. And I'll say that's pre-COVID, of course. And we generate that revenue through 7 distinct lines of business. Like a lot of other schools, we have residential dining, retail dining, catering, stores, and a food court. But a couple things that are somewhat not all schools see is that we do all of the athletic feeding and concessions, and we also have a full service restaurant. So that's the portfolio. Over the 13 years I've been here, sustainability has been incredibly important to us, but it really has taken a focused effort and a tremendous amount of resources to move our needle. But in the last 3 to 5 years, I'm really happy to tell you that we have moved the needle and we are seeing a lot of traction. Key to that has been Allison Tjaden. Allison joined us in 2011 as a sustainability coordinator. And then in 2015, she took on a much larger role as our assistant director for new initiatives. And the MCRC and the Cool Food Pledge are 2 of our signature initiatives. And she's just done a fabulous job, and she's going to tell that story. So Allison?
Awesome. Thank you, Colleen. I'm very excited to share our case study from the University of Maryland about the Cool Food Pledge. Next slide. In August of 2019, the University of Maryland became the first university signatory of the Cool Food Pledge. Can we go back a slide, please? The pledge is an initiative of the World Resources Institute, or WRI, and supported by many other organizations, including the UN Environment Program and Eat Foundation. The goal is to slash food-related greenhouse gas emissions by 25% by the year 2030, and WRI provides robust support for this work, including a detailed website, which I recommend you check out, coolfoodpledge.org, detailed technical papers and documentation about their methodology, as well as a behavior change playbook that we found to be very helpful. They've provided one-on-one consultations with us, as well as interactive webinars and work sessions with other signatories, which has been exciting because those signatories are across many different industries, not just within higher education. Next slide. We were drawn to the Cool Food Pledge because it is a public and quantifiable way for us to take action on many of the menus of change principles that we had already been working on. So you think about some of those principles that have been important to us. like serving less red meat less often, thinking produce first, also serving more kinds of seafood more often. You can see more on the slide here. It's the Cool Food Pledge that helped us to establish and commit to a key target measure, and one that is in terms that matter most to our students, which is climate action. Many of our campuses have already established greenhouse gas reduction goals or commitments relating to carbon neutrality. And while this often does not include food purchasing, students are accustomed to seeing the environmental goals and programs outlined this way. So the Cool Food Pledge sets our work for sustainability in food service in the key context that our students and campus stakeholders understand. So what's been going on since we committed to the Cool Food Pledge last year? As you can see here, our tracked food purchases went up by 10.3% overall in 2019. We were serving a lot more food in 2019 compared to the other previous years. And most of that growth occurred in our plant proteins, followed by other animal-based foods. And despite serving much more food overall in 2019, beef and lamb only went up 1.63%. And it's using this purchasing data that we can determine our GHG emissions and our impact. Next slide. The pledge was designed with an absolute target of 25% greenhouse gas emission reduction. However, WRI also developed a metric for relative target, one that accounts for growth overall in overall food purchasing. So when we look at our results so far against this relative 38% target, we're on track to reduce the GHG emissions of the food we serve per meal or per 1,000 calories, as you see pictured on this graph. And given the disruptions to our food service due to COVID-19 in 2020, we anticipate that this relative target will be a very important metric for us moving forward. So our findings show us that while the work will be challenging, there is a lot of work ahead, that this effort is paying off, and we're really eager to continue working on our campus and with our students and our teams across campus on this effort. And looking forward to hear your questions and comments for us a little bit later on in the session. So back to you, Sophie.
And Colleen, it's so exciting to see this really taking Menus of Change principles a notch above and beyond. And of course, it's so exciting because of the collaboration that we have with World Resources Institute, the many ways in which this is so aligned, as you noted, with a wide number of Menus of Change principles. So now I'm excited to turn it over to Marcus Carson, who is Assistant Director for Sustainability and Quality Control at Duke University. He's also going to share a case study of Menus of Change principles in action. And in his case, it really is in the context of a certification opportunity. So Marcus, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sophie. As Sophie said, my name is Marcus Carson, and I am the Assistant Director for Sustainability at Duke University. And I have been at Duke for about, Sarah, if you could pull up my slides, that would be great. I've been at Duke University for about 5 years. And what's been really fun about that is my background is actually in sustainability versus food service. So it's been a really great opportunity to approach sustainability in a really operational way. Today I'm excited to talk to you about a certification program that we've been using to implement the Menus of Change principles. And so to start, I just want to provide a little bit of context about Duke Dining because its structure is unique. We are made up of 3 residential operations, 32 retail operations, and those are made up of all-you-care-to-eat facilities, vendor partner locations that have campus-only operations. Some of our vendor partners have local businesses as well in the Durham area, and we also have a handful of national brands on campus. So you kind of get a sense of what we're looking at. We're not fully self-operated, and we're not fully management company. So some challenges we have and you can just hit forward a few times as you get to the end of the list, Sarah. Thank you so much. So some challenges we have about implementing sustainability into our program is because of our unique structure where we're majority partner vendors, we have some limited authority about what we can ask them to do. Sustainability is a complicated topic to teach in general. Our operators have limited bandwidth. They're unfamiliar with the value add that sustainability has. It's a complicated topic to communicate to our customers, and there's a lot of unseen work involved. If you go to the next slide for me. So in the face of that, 2 goals that we have are to incentivize and teach our vendor partners about sustainability and to implement sustainability programming and operational efforts, and to communicate the work to students and customers so that there is a clear value add. Next slide. So why did we choose to do a certification? So the first reason is that it provides a really clear framework for our vendor partners. It makes it easy to measure progress. It's aspirational because it gives them a direction to move on how to improve over time. And it's a really concise and clear communication for our customers. Next slide. So how do we make this happen? So in our sustainability programming, we use a supply chain framework where we think about where our food comes from and where it ultimately goes. And so we combined this with the menus of change principles. And that is how we came up with the structure of the certification. Next slide. So here's what that looks like. So the certification uses 23 measures across 5 weighted categories. Those categories are procurement, menu planning, waste recovery, communication, and innovation. There are 1,000 cumulative points, plus our vendor partners can earn some innovation points for extra credit. And there are 5 levels of certification. You can see there on the left, that's our little seal that we use. So taking a closer look, for each category, we ask 2 questions. We ask, why is it important, and what can you do to improve? And then that second question is really where the menus of change principles come into play and where they take center stage. Next slide. So taking a closer look, procurement, we ask, why is it important? So we talk about the environmental impact, the human health impact, and the impact on the local economy. And then you think about how can you improve? So those are where we really operationalize the menus of change principles, like buy fresh and seasonal, and reward better agricultural practices. This is an example. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but it's an example of the full scorecard that each of the operators go through in the certification program. And then so moving forward, we have unfortunately had to suspend the program while our vendor partners recalibrate. They've just returned to campus. And the plan is to relaunch in the spring 2021 when hopefully things start to get a little bit back to normal. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Sophie. Thank you so much.
All right. Interesting, and we will hopefully have time toward the end to dig into some more of those COVID implications. So we'll welcome back our University of Maryland colleagues, invite up all of our speakers now for discussion. And please, we encourage you to use the chat. Any questions you have, comments, your own experiences as well, but especially questions for our fabulous panelists. We would love to hear from you. So you can go ahead and use the chat. But I'll start things off with a couple of questions myself. So Allison, I mentioned in my presentation that we believe students are the best way forward, and it's in our very vision statement. It's really our reason for being in universities. So how have you engaged students and your campus community more broadly around the Cool Food Pledge?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much fun, and that's one of the things that I do love about participating with MCRC is just that student-focused, attention, because students are really the reason why we do what we do. And, students on our campus at Maryland are very engaged in a lot of our programs, but I have just been blown away by the passion that the students bring to the Cool Food Pledge and the way in which they've wanted to engage even more deeply in this program. We've seen students participate in a level of professionalism with us and on research projects like our environmental science and policy capstone students. They work as a team of 10 for the whole semester, engaging with us and project planning, research, surveys, things like that. And for the first time, we've actually also seen a lot of interest from graduate students on campus, including a fellows cohort called the Global Stewards Program that do research across the food, energy, water nexus. And they also took on the Cool Food Pledge as a part of their research. So it's been really exciting to see how just this commitment has really unlocked a lot of energy from across a diverse number of students on our campus.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, kind of, you never know who will come out of the woodwork
No.
until you have a flagship program like this. So Colleen, obviously this has been really successful so far, it sounds like, but as the dining director, how would you say MCRC helped you get to where you are with deciding to go ahead and make this public commitment? And then as part of that, how did you think about risk management, right, before going ahead and making, again, this very public announcement to join the Cool Food Pledge?
Sure. So, I'd have to tell you that MCURC was our first signature initiative, as I mentioned earlier, and Allison, in her role to take lead on this, really gave us the confidence as a department that we could do it. But with the work we did on the collective impact, we already had a lot of the effort underway. So we saw that there was a parallel path because we were already collecting data, and we realized, hey, we can do this, and it's working, and we're seeing results. So I want to say that definitely it was a catalyst for us. The other thing that was really nice with MCRC is participating in the annual meetings. When we did that, we had a great chance to talk to others across the country and to see the kind of things that they were doing. And, we have a bit of a competitive streak about us. So, when we see others making some inroads, there was a lot of desire to be part of that and to have our own inroads as well. So definitely a catalyst, definitely setting the tone with the collective impact and really, started us off for sure. So very, very clear linkage for us from MCRC to the Cool Food Pledge.
Interesting. It's fun because you never know at a conference like this or a meeting, kind of what those casual collisions or what, nugget of inspiration in the presentation will lead to. And here you are years later, right? Yeah. You also reminded me of a term I first heard at one of our annual meetings, which was collabitition. Collaboration meets competition. And I love that spirit, especially in college and university, right? Where sports teams and just all kinds of friendly competition really driving ambition, driving bold leadership, driving innovation, and really driving decision making in your case, it sounds like. So, and just for the audience, for context, the Collective Impact Initiative is a more sort of behind the scenes effort that's very aligned with the Cool Food Pledge and actually predates it, but essentially looks at the collective target and collective impact of jointly heading in a direction of a more plant-forward protein portfolio. And so really one of the early questions from that project was even, can universities collect this data? Can we standardize it? Can we then work together towards a common goal? And we actually have the same, and it's no coincidence because we work closely with WRI, we have the same goal of that 25% reduction by 2030, but it's collectively, whereas not all universities are comfortable coming out with this very public commitment, right? So, so thank you so much for that. Marcus, a couple questions for you. And again, folks, if you're interested, and thanks, Sarah, for sending resources in the chat there, but anyone else with questions, we'd certainly love to hear from you. Marcus, you alluded to this a little bit. You had a section on challenges, but that was for sustainability, I think, overall. So what would you say is the biggest barrier to making the certification program happen at Duke? And then, what's stopping you from going all in with that program?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge probably is making sure that our vendor partners have the tools they need. Like I mentioned, sustainability, it's a complicated topic to teach. It's a complicated topic to learn about, especially if you're more comfortable in the operational day-to-day setting. And so the challenge has been presenting our vendor partners with the tools that they need to meet the standards that are in the certification. We found that many partners are gung-ho to do their best. As soon as you kind of point them in a direction or you give them the tools that they need, they really embrace it. They definitely embrace this idea that you just introduced of collaboration. Our vendor partners, that's one of the reasons that the certification was so productive on our campus, is because all of our vendor partners are self-contained businesses, so they can compete with one another for who gets the higher certification. If they see their friend on the other side of the facility get a 4-leaf rating and they have a 2-leaf rating, they come to me and they say, okay, what do I need to do to get the points to bump up my rating? So providing them with the tools has been really key for making that happen.
Interesting. Yeah, and as you said, competition in many different domains can lead to good things. So we are actually going to go ahead and welcome a question from one of our fellow MCRC members, James Benson. Sarah will go ahead and let him join us here. And James, we'd love to know what's on your mind. I feel like I'm hosting a radio show, you know. Tell us, James, or I will ask you my next question and you'll join us after that. We've got about 5 minutes left, so, oh, sounds like he's coming. The suspense is killing us. So James is a relatively new member, but a fabulous leader on the culinary front from Yale. And while we're waiting for him, I'm going to actually follow up with you, Marcus. So that the certification program standards are aimed at vendors. You started to get to this just now, but what has been the student response? You know, much like I asked Allison. Can you talk a little bit about the student engagement piece?
Yeah. So a big bit of progress that we have to make is marketing the certification effectively to students. That said, on the back end, it's been a really powerful tool for communicating the efforts that our vendor partners are making. So when a student approaches us and says, like, so what are you doing? Or what is a specific location doing around sustainability? We can show them their scorecard. And all their scorecards are published on our website so that they can look it up and they can see very specifically what are the different efforts that they're doing. And students have, especially the students who are engaged with sustainability, have really enjoyed that. And especially it provides a great teaching tool. I've been able to use it when I've guest lectured in some courses, because certification is a really big tool in sustainability circles. And so it has kind of echoed that same kind of thing that you see in a lot of different spaces, especially with food.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What you're reminding me actually of some insights from another of our research collaborators, which is our newest research collaborator is the Food for Climate League, and actually separate from MCRC, I work with them as well. And you know, they're digging into what are the most effective ways to communicate climate beneficial foods, right? Because so often you have the investment, or I shouldn't say so often, not often enough, but when you do have at a university or at a large food, you know, CPG company or a food service company, or really any kind of company that is taking that bold stand, making the investment, often what you hear is, well, we tried it and then it just didn't sell, or, you know, we couldn't get people to wrap their heads around it, or it was too complicated. Like, what is regenerative and why should I pay more for that? And you do have this kind of flurry of barriers on the communication, and the psychology of climate communication is really, really juicy. So we're really excited to have them as a collaborator too, because I think it's going to feed in so nicely to a lot of these things that you've shared here, Colleen, Allison, and Marcus, in terms of taking Menus of Change principles a step further, what climate conscious dining programs look like, and then on the marketing. And because it's student engagement, vendor engagement, it's all levels of those communication channels. So we have a question from Frank. I'm not sure I can pronounce your last name, but Frank, thank you for your question, which is, do you think this type of certification, this question is for you, Marcus, I believe, could even be national at some point, like certified organic? He's streaming big for you, Marcus. Tell us.
I mean, export certification would be really great. I am very sensitive to certification fatigue, especially around food. Especially with consumers. You know, when you go to the grocery store and you're faced with all of the different certifications that are on foods. And so I think making sure that you're strategic about how that's implemented and how that's communicated, so it doesn't just become another label that you're not really quite sure what it means. So, but I'll take it big.
You'll dream big. Yeah, exactly. No, I just want to point about certification fatigue. Well, encourage everyone to find our speakers during the networking and ask them about how COVID has affected their program's ability to reach these goals, because certainly that is obviously top of mind for everyone. So Sarah, back to you, and thank you.
Oh my gosh, you guys, we can carry this on forever. So Sophie, thank you so much for driving everyone over to the networking opportunities, and hopefully they can have a casual collision with all of you. But we do have to wrap up this session. However, we do encourage all of you to stay here for our presenters' top takeaways in 6 words or less after some brief details about the upcoming networking break. So like Sophie mentioned, if you look to the left, you can see on your screen that you can participate in a number of activities. We have a special culinary demonstration in the expo area brought to you by our sponsor Oatly on innovative comfort classics for plant-based menus. You can also click on the networking tab, which will randomly match you up with one other attendee for a 4-minute conversation, just like we were all standing at the coffee station together in Hyde Park. And last but not least, if you participate in these activities for all 6 weeks, you are entered into a raffle for registration and travel to our next year's Menus of Change in Hyde Park. And now the exciting part. Sophie, in 6 words or less, what is your top takeaway for our audience today?
1 word. It's collaborate.
Oh, I like it.
If you need 5 more, they would be because you are better together.
Okay, I'm writing that one down. And then Allison, how about you?
I think I would say climate action through thoughtful food.
And Colleen?
And I'm going to say find and hire a sustainability champion.
Nice.
You get work done.
That's a good one.
How do you get it done?
And Marcus?
I would say embrace your role as a leader.
Oh, all very, very thoughtful points, you guys. Thank you so, so, so much. And to all of you, stay tuned after the break to see more of Sophie on the main stage. And she'll also be signing her new book, like she mentioned, in the final reception today. But for now, we all wish you a fantastic break. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.